Hello and welcome to the January 22nd edition of the Bobby Hesley Show, the year 2021. Still getting used to saying that. How's everybody doing this morning? Well, I hope that you're coping. I hope that you have, I hope that you're working through what I call your functional disappointment with the outcome of everything. I hope that you're still living your life. I hope that you're still focusing on all those areas in your life that you still have control over, because that's certainly what I've been doing with mine. So I'm going to get right to it. Before I do, everybody, please like, share, and comment on this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, especially if you want to see a couple of links that I'm going to provide in this program. Been dropping weight, guys. I got some stuff I'm going to be sharing that you're going to love. But in the meantime, there are more important pressing matters. Now, I stand behind everything I said on my show yesterday. Everything that I said. And I know I ruffled some feathers. I know there's probably some Catholics out there that are pretty upset with me with everything I said regarding the first Black American Cardinal, Wilton Gregory. And I do want to correct myself on one thing that I said. I meant to say former president of the USCCB, former president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. You know I will, David Gray. You know I will. That's what was sitting on my chest this morning. I had to do a follow-up to yesterday, so you buckle up, my friend. But the fact is, Archbishop or Cardinal Wilton Gregory, he is the Archbishop of Washington, D.C. He hasn't been president of the USCCB since 2004, okay? He was USCCB president from 2001 to 2004. And he was the first Black president of the USCCB. That can be celebrated, but in my mind, because my Catholicism comes before everything else, before my Catholicism comes before my race, my gender, my occupation, my political leanings, et cetera, while it's glad to see these landmark Black achievements in the Catholic Church, my joy at those things is undermined by the liberalism and by the weakness of these Black leaders. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, I do want to retract what I said. Cardinal Wilton Gregory is not the current president of the USCCB. It's actually Jose Gomez. And I knew that. I've always associated Wilton Gregory with the USCCB because I do remember I was reading, I think it was Jet Magazine back in 2001. And I remember they made a big deal about Wilton Gregory being the first Black president of the USCCB. And I was really proud of that. And back then I wasn't really into church politics. I wasn't really into the goings on in the hierarchy. I was just doing the day-to-day things of Catholicism. So I've always had that neural association of Cardinal Gregory and being the president of the USCCB, but there's been several since. And so I do retract that. I do take that back. I correct myself on that. Now, before I get to Gregory, one thing I want to spend a little bit of time on is I also want to do a little bit of follow-up on how I went at some of these Trump prophets, these people that were giving very specific prophecies that Donald Trump was going to be reinaugurated on January 20th, 2021, that came and went. And folks, the reason why it's important for me to raise awareness about that, I'm not trying to be, spread division. I'm not trying to attack people on my own side. But the fact is, it leads to lots of damage and destruction when you give people false hope and those false hopes go unmet and unfulfilled. It leads to despair. And I predicted that would happen. Weeks ago, when I started backing off and I started saying, you know what, this thing is probably over. It's time for us to prepare. But there were still people that were doubling down. You had all the Q people saying, trust the plan. You had all these different people who kept saying, trust the plan, trust the plan, trust the plan. And they had no proof, no sources for any of the things that they were saying. And it was lots of people were eating it up, hook, line, and sinker. And they were really setting themselves up for lots of despair and lots of disappointment. And I want to show you guys what that looks like. It's actually pretty heartbreaking to watch. But I want to show you guys just so you could see the damage that has been done by the Q right, the damage that has been done by these Trump prophets, these evangelical Trump prophets who were prophesying in the name of the Lord that Donald Trump was going to get reelected. And it's really hard to watch, but it needs to be seen.
President Trump, if you see this, please save us. I don't even see our American flag anymore. Biden's talking with some kind of crazy flag. This is America. This is our land. Please, President Trump. Please, please, I hope you have a plan. God, please save us. Save us from the devil, please. Y'all, I'm about to have a panic attack. This is our country. Our country. This is awful. God, please save us, please. President.
So Annie Smart, when you say what false hope, I realize that you need to remain relevant. Well, firstly, thanks for your, I really appreciate your Facebook psychology degree. So thanks for psychoanalyzing me without knowing anything about me except, my content. So you have access to my mind and heart through your cell phone there or whatever you're watching my video on. But the fact is, what false hope? Did you not just watch what I just played? All the false hope that Q and all these Trump prophets were spreading to people that were setting them up for this heartbreak and disappointment. Did you not just see that? That's the false hope I'm talking about.
Trump, if you see this, please save us. I don't even see our American flag anymore. Bye.
That's what I was talking about. Emotionalism. I don't know what you mean by that. But anyway, let's move on. So it's really important, folks, that you use critical thinking, and it's really important that you test every spirit. Now, lots of these Q people, and there's all kinds of different brands of them. I've only found one person who's backtracked so far. Anybody ever hear of Code Monkey Z? Here's what he said recently on a tweet. We gave it our all. Now we need to keep our chins up and go back to our lives as best as we're able. We have a new president sworn in, and it is our responsibility as citizens to respect the Constitution, regardless of whether or not we agree with the specifics or details regarding officials who are sworn in. As we enter into the next administration, please remember all the friends and happy memories we made together over the past few years. I'll have more to say in a few days regarding a new project I'm currently fleshing out. God bless. So Code Monkey Z was a pretty big guy that was thinking Trump was going to get reelected, and that's what he said. So he's up to something new. So getting back to the U.S. bishops, particularly Cardinal Gregory. Now, the reason I keep going at Cardinal Gregory, and I do respect him as a shepherd. I do respect him as one of the apostles, successors of the apostles. But the fact is, because Cardinal Gregory is the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., he's technically the pastor, which is the Latin word for shepherd, of Joe Biden, who is a professing Catholic. Okay? He is. And I believe, this is just my opinion, and I have a right to express this opinion. I believe that Cardinal Gregory, based on what he said in an interview on November 20th, and based on any statements I have not seen from him lately, I believe that Cardinal Gregory, all due respect to him being the first Black American cardinal, I get that, but I believe that he is standing in the way of the salvation of Joe Biden. I believe that he is an obstacle to the salvation of Joe Biden. I believe that he is getting in God's way to saving and redeeming Joe Biden, because believe it or not, I pray every day for the president, no matter who they are. During the entire 8 years of the Obama administration, I called Obama out by name every single day in my morning prayers. And I was very specific. I would say for the salvation and for the conversion of President Barack Obama. I did the same thing with Donald Trump, and I'm going to do the same thing with Joe Biden. Every single day, I will pray for the salvation and for the conversion of Joe Biden. But the fact is, part of why I have to pray is because there are obstacles that are in the way to the salvation of Joe Biden, one of which is Cardinal Gregory. And the reason why I say that is because Cardinal Gregory is giving Joe Biden no incentive whatsoever to repent over his views on abortion. Neither are any of the other cardinals. All they're doing is they're making these weak, generic statements regarding the church's opposition to abortion, but they're all talk. They're not using any of the power that they have as bishops to deny and withhold Holy Communion from these pro-abortion Catholic politicians. They're not excommunicating them. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not putting their children on punishment. It's bad spiritual parenting. And for any Catholics that are triggered and are upset about me publicly calling out Cardinal Gregory, the first Black American cardinal, that feels like I'm being a jerk, that feels like I'm being this disobedient, terrible Catholic, I would encourage you to study more on the Code of Canon Law, because I have every right as a Catholic. According to the Code of Canon Law, I have a right as a Catholic to say what I'm saying. As a matter of fact, according to Canon 212, Section 3, I'm going to read to you my right that I have to say everything that I said yesterday against Cardinal Gregory and to say everything that I'm going to say about him today. So Canon 212 from the Code of Canon Law says, quote, according to the knowledge, competence, and prestige which they possess, they, meaning the laity, have the right and even at times the duty. Did you hear that, folks? Not only do I have the right as a lay person, as a baptized member of the Catholic Church, I even have the duty, according to the Code of Canon Law, to manifest to the sacred pastors, which Cardinal Gregory is. Remember, pastor is a Latin word for shepherd. He's one of our shepherds that Christ put in authority over us. To manifest to the sacred pastors their opinion on matters which pertain to the good of the church and to make their opinion known to the rest of the Christian faithful. So not only do I have the right and the duty to make my opinion known, which pertains to the good of the church, but I even have the right and duty to make it known to my fellow Catholics like I'm doing on my channel. So miss me with your outrage, miss me with your triggered emotionalism, miss me with your identity politics that I would dare say anything negative about the first Black American cardinal. Because according to the Code of Canon Law, I'm doing nothing wrong. And as a matter of fact, according to Canon Law, I am living out one of my duties to say what I'm saying. To make their opinion known to the rest of the Christian faithful without prejudice to the integrity of faith and morals, with reverence toward their pastors, and attentive to the common advantage of the dignity of persons. So right there, according to Canon 212, Section 3, I am completely within my rights and within my duties to say everything I'm saying. So anybody who objects to what I'm saying today or what I said yesterday, you're caught up in your fee-fees. You're caught up in pure emotionalism, devoid of logic and devoid of knowledge of canon law. That's just the bottom line. So examine that. And there's even biblical precedent for it as well. In Galatians 2:11, St. Paul withstood Peter. He says, but when Cephas, which means rock, Kepha in Aramaic, when Cephas/Peter came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, he was eating with the Gentiles, but when he came and drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. And the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, so that even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. But when I saw their conduct was not in step with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas before them all, in other words, he put St. Peter on blast before all the other apostles. If you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you force the Gentiles to live like Jews? In other words, St. Paul was condemning Peter's conduct. He was condemning Peter for failing to use the very authority that he was given by Christ, the keys of the kingdom. And if you want another more, well, not modern example, but if you want a medieval example of that, we had a doctor of the church named Catherine of Siena, St. Catherine of Siena, who corrected Pope Gregory XI. And you can read that full letter of St. Catherine of Siena to Pope Gregory XI if you head over to my YouTube channel and subscribe. I've got it linked there in the description of this video. So please be sure to do that. It's very interesting. So we as the laity, we as the non-ordained, we have the right to speak out against our bishops. It's not disrespectful. It's not sacrilegious. It's not irreverent. It just is what it is. So the bottom line is these weak bishops and cardinals are obstacles to the salvation, not only of Joe Biden, but to all the other Catholic politicians like Nancy Pelosi. For example, when I read the letter of the current president of the USCCB, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, Jose Gomez, I was very disappointed. I thought it was weak. I thought it was a checkmark letter. Oh, okay, because I'm a Catholic bishop, okay, we have to speak out against abortion. He kind of wrote it in. I was disappointed with it. I was not satisfied. It fell very short of what should have been said and what should have been done. I'll read a quick quote from it. This is from Jose Gomez regarding the inauguration of Joe Biden. He said, rather than impose further expansions of abortion and contraception, as he has promised, meaning Biden, I am hopeful. That's the word that got me. That's the word that really ticked me off. I am hopeful that the new president and his administration will work with the church and others of goodwill. My hope, there's that hope word again, is that we begin a dialogue to address the complicated cultural and economic factors that are driving abortion and discouraging families. We've been doing that for the last 20 or 30 years, and where has that gotten us? Where has all this dialogue with all these King Herod politicians gotten us, huh? Yucking it up at the Alfred Smith dinner with all these pro-abortion politicians. You got Dolan doing that all the time. Where has that gotten us? Has that gotten any of these politicians to repent on abortion? Show me the last Catholic politician, John Kerry, all the crooked Kennedys, all the crooked Cuomos, Sotomayor, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, all these Catholics in name only, these professing Catholics. When is the last time a prominent Catholic politician repented of abortion, recanted their policy on it due to this dialogue with bishops? Because all the bishops want to dialogue about with them are all these other periphery social justice issues, which they equate with abortion, immigration, unemployment, racism, all these other things. Yet they won't address the biggest form of racism, systemic racism in this country, which is the reproductive racism of the abortion industry. These bishops are obsessed with racism, except they give a complete blind eye to the biggest form of racism that this country has, which is killing black babies on purpose. You never hear them talk about that. You never hear them talk about that kind of systemic racism. The systemic racism that murders more black people than any other kind of systemic racism this country's ever seen. Not a word about that from these bishops, specifically about the black abortion rates. You never hear them talk about that. My hope, too, there's that hope word the third time, continuing Gomez, is that we can work together to finally put in place a coherent family policy in this country, one that acknowledges the crucial importance of strong marriages and parenting to the well-being of children and the stability of communities. All these vague platitudes that mean nothing. If the president, with full respect for the church's religious freedom, were to engage in this conversation, it would go a long way toward restoring the civil balance and healing our country's needs. You know how I feel when I read this, guys? You guys ever go to the grocery store and you see just these kids acting up and you're like, man, if I was their parent, and you see these parents beg with their kids, bargain with their kids, try to negotiate with their kids. Hey, Timmy, if you act right, I'll take you for ice cream later, okay? Not using any of their authority that God gave them to discipline and chastise their children. And the fact is, children get away with what they know they can. They do what they know they can do. And if they don't have fear or respect for their parents, they are going to test their parents. They are going to push them to their limits. And they are going to get away with all kinds of things. And the fact of the matter is, Joe Biden, being a professing Catholic, is under the spiritually parental authority of these U.S. Catholic bishops, particularly Cardinal Gregory, because he's in Washington, D.C. now. And the fact is, Joe Biden has no healthy fear, no respect, and no reverence for any of his spiritual fathers and pastors. None. Because as soon as he sat down at that desk, minutes after his inauguration, he removed abortion restrictions. He allowed transgenders back in the Olympics and all this other stuff. There are all kinds of anti-Catholic legislation that boom, 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 boom. He cracked his crusty old knuckles and got worked right away to implementing. I showed you guys the smirk on his face he had yesterday in the presence of those bishops. He's undeterred because none of them are threatening excommunication. None of them are denying him Holy Communion, except the courageous priest down in South Carolina who got a bunch of flack. And you want to hear something even crazier? As weak as this statement was of Jose Gomez against the inauguration of Joe Biden, there's even other leftist bishops that came out against that actually condemned this statement. Look at this. Look at Blaise Supich of Chicago, Cardinal Supich, one of the worst cardinals in the whole country, in the whole church. He was pretty triggered by that weak letter. Today, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops issued an ill-considered statement on the day of President Joe Biden's inauguration. Ill-considered. Really? This statement was crafted without the involvement of the administrative committee, a collegial consultation that is normal course for statements that represent and enjoy the considered endorsement of the American bishops. You see this garbage? All he's thinking about is the bureaucratic process that wasn't observed. He's not thinking about the salvation of Joe Biden. He's not thinking, listen, we got to rein this guy in. We cannot give the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus to this guy who just, one of the first things he did when he sat down was remove abortion restrictions and reverse the Mexico City Act, which enables federal funding of abortion to overseas countries. All the anti-family stuff he's doing, all the anti-gender stuff he's doing, that's an assault on the dignity of the human body. Because he knows that no matter what he does, he's going to go to Mass this Sunday and receive Holy Communion, just like right next to all the other faithful Catholics. He's undeterred. Of course, he's going to literally get away with murder, and that's a fact. Bad parenting leads to kids getting away with things. And in Joe Biden's case, the bad parenting and the bad governance of these bishops is literally enabling him to get away with murder. Literally. You wait and see what he's going to do about abortion. You just wait and see what Joe Biden is going to do. Only time I ever heard somebody talking about withholding communion from these Catholic politicians was 8 years ago. And that was by Cardinal Raymond Burke back before he got demoted.
House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi has no Catholic right to be granted communion. That's according to the leading cardinal of the highest court at the Vatican. The Washington Times reports Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke says Pelosi should be denied the Eucharist until she changes her advocacy on abortion. The cardinal cited Canon 915 of canon law concerning people who persist in grave sin and still profess to be devout Catholic.
So the fact is, that was 8 years ago. And I appreciate that, Jennifer. It's common sense. It's common sense. Come on back to the church, Lindell. Come on back. Shoot me a private message. Let's talk. There's no reason to be a lapsed Catholic. Trust me. You'll love it if you come back. But the fact is, that's the only time I ever heard anybody coming out against these politicians, and that was 8 years ago. 8 years ago. Now, I'm going to get to Nancy Pelosi in a second because Archbishop Cordileone, who's the Archbishop of San Francisco, which is Nancy Pelosi's home diocese, where she's based out of, he came out against Nancy Pelosi, but I was disappointed with that too, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to show you why. But I want to expose, or at least inform the public, again, which is my canonical right, according to Canon 212, Section 3 of the Code of Canon Law, that was promulgated in 1983 under the authority of Pope St. John Paul II. I'm not doing anything wrong here, Catholics. So miss me with all your fake outrage. It's all emotional outrage. Okay? It is. Wilton Gregory has a history of liberalism and giving a pass to anti-Catholic politicians that do things that fly squarely in the face of church teaching. For example, as president of the USCCB back in the day, between the years of 2001 and 2004, Archbishop Gregory appointed a pro-abortion attorney to the USCCB's National Review Board. The attorney, Pamela Hayes, has made donations to the pro-abortion lobbying group, Emily's List, as well as pro-abortion politicians, John Kerry and Hillary Clinton. And that was back when he was president of the USCCB back in the early 2000s. Appointed pro-abortion attorneys to the review board. That's a betrayal. That is a dereliction of duty. It is. When it comes to the teachings of the church on homosexuality, he has championed people, anti-Catholics, like Father James Martin, one of the worst Jesuits in the church that confuses the faithful regarding church teaching on homosexuality and LGBT issues. At a 2019, I'm reading this from faithfulshepherds.com. I have also linked to this full report on Cardinal Gregory. If you go to my YouTube channel and subscribe, you'll see it there underneath the letter that St. Catherine of Siena wrote, correcting and chastising the Pope back in the 1300s. Okay, and she ended up being a saint and a doctor of the church. She did nothing wrong. In fact, it would have been wrong of her to not say and do what she did, as it would be wrong of me to not say and do what I'm doing, because according to Canon 212, Section 3, I have a duty to speak out against Cardinal Gregory. I have a duty, and I'm just doing my Catholic duty. And maybe you should try doing yours too, if you have a problem with this. At a 2019 Theology on Tap event, Archbishop Gregory said pro-gay priest Father James Martin has certainly, quote, caused a stir, but that he has a good voice to speak on the gay and lesbian community within the church. Again, that's another deterrent to the salvation of these other people, because he advocates that they can live active homosexual lifestyles and still receive Holy Communion. Why should they repent of that lifestyle if they're being rewarded with the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus? You guys do realize that it is the sin of sacrilege to receive Holy Communion while in a state of mortal sin. I went into that yesterday when I read 1 Corinthians 11:23 through 31. You are not allowed to receive the sacrament of the Eucharist while in a state of mortal sin. Why? Because a dead man can't eat. That's why. Corpses can't eat. They can't process food. That's why you'll never go to a morgue and see a sign that says, please do not feed corpses. They don't need to say that, because dead people can't eat. And if you're spiritually dead and you're in a state of mortal sin due to an active homosexual lifestyle or a disordered heterosexual lifestyle, if you fornicate, if you cohabitate, if you're married and you contracept, it's not only gays that fall under church teaching regarding chastity. We're all called to live chaste lives. And if you're not living a chaste life, whether you're heterosexually unchaste or homosexually unchaste, you are not allowed to receive Holy Communion until you've gone to the sacrament of confession and repented of that. Archbishop Gregory has designated a pro-gay priest who leads a homosexual affirming parish as, quote, spiritual director of victims of sex abuse in the Atlanta Archdiocese. And Atlanta is one of the worst parts in the country regarding black homosexuality. There are more black homosexuals, active black homosexual, LGBT homosexual people in Atlanta than there are anywhere else in the country. And I'm not being hateful towards these people. it is what it is. Right? We always hear about gay pride, right? Well, if you're living a gay lifestyle, are you loud and proud or not? Because it's going to be talked about. If you don't want people talking about your gay lifestyle, then knock it off with all the loud and proud rhetoric. You can't have it both ways. So there's tons more of these bullet points that expose the history of Cardinal Gregory regarding abortion, regarding LGBT ideology, regarding his stance on homosexuality. He also teamed up with McCarrick. Do y'all know who Theodore McCarrick is? Who was at the center of the sex abuse crisis 2 or 3 years ago? They paraphrased a letter to inform their brother bishops in June 2004 that Ratzinger, who was later went on to be Pope Benedict XVI, basically wanted to leave the decision up to each bishop, thereby downplaying his real intentions against Canon 915 regarding like revoking communion for people that live actively sinful lifestyles. So go to my YouTube page if you want to see that full video there, or see that full list there. Now, let's get to Nancy Pelosi and her archbishop, her cardinal, Salvatore Cordileone. So Nancy Pelosi did a podcast with Hillary Clinton. Imagine all the witch cackling you'd hear on that. And here's what Nancy Pelosi said. She said, I think that Donald Trump is president because the issue of a woman's right to choose, she said of abortion, implying that pro-life voters boosted Trump to victory in 2016. She added that these voters, quote, were willing to sell the whole democracy down the river for that one issue. So this is a professing Catholic, Nancy Pelosi, insulting millions of pro-life Americans who love the unborn, who actually believe that the weakest among us are those who are in the womb, who can't even scream when they're being killed. They have no voice, literally have no voice. She insulted millions of those Americans. So the article says, on Thursday, Pelosi's Archbishop responded to her comments on abortion and voting. And here's what Salvatore Cordileone said, who again is her bishop, her spiritual father. No Catholic in good conscience can favor abortion, said Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco, Pelosi's home diocese, in a statement issued on Thursday. Quote, our land is soaked with the blood of the innocent, and it must stop. Okay, so what are you going to do to stop it then, Archbishop Cordileone? You got the power to excommunicate these Catholics like Pelosi that are soaking our land with the blood of the innocent. Why are you not on record excommunicating her? Why are you not withholding Holy Communion from her? Why are you not deterring her abortion behavior? Punish her, man. You got the power to do it. Do it. I'm tired of all the talk. This is what I'm talking about. These weak statements that these bishops put out, but they never do anything about it. They only say things about it. They make these polished, rehearsed, carefully crafted, politically correct, weak, spineless statements against these pro-abortion politicians. The few times they even address pro-abortion politicians, it's like seeing a shooting star. When you hear some of these bishops speak out against abortion, it's like a once every 300 year eclipse. Like, oh man, did you catch the bishop that spoke out against abortion today? Oh no, man, I missed it. Oh wow, well, bummer, because you're probably not going to hear it for the next couple centuries, because they're so busy caught up on all these other peripheral social justice issues in service of this unachievable secular worldly utopia that they know is not going to be achieved. So I want to see some excommunications. I want to see communion being withheld. Otherwise, until I see that, until I see canonical, ecclesiastical, disciplinary action taken against these Catholic pro-abortion politicians by their bishops, by their shepherds, by their spiritual fathers, I'm not convinced that they care about the issue. Because if they truly cared about the salvation of the souls of these politicians, they would warn them with excommunication. Because again, I liken excommunication to the navigation system of an airplane that's in a nosedive, right? You ever hear the black box recordings of planes that crash? You can hear it say, pull up, pull up, pull up. It's a warning system. If a plane gets below a certain altitude and it's nosediving, the crash warning systems start to come on. Or if it's flying too close to the ground, it'll say terrain, 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 pull up, pull up. That's what excommunication is, folks. The penalty of excommunication is the church's loving remedial way of telling wayward Catholics that have broken communion with the church based on their persistence in heresy and manifest sin. That is the church's way. When people are nosediving into hell, when people like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and the Kennedys and the Kerrys and the Cuomos and Sebelius and all these other Catholics, all these other professing Catholic politicians, when they are nosediving into hell through all of their corruption, all of their anti-life, anti-Catholic corruption, it is the job of their bishops, of their cardinals. It is Wilton Gregory's job. It is Cordileone's job to withhold Holy Communion from them, to excommunicate them, because that's their way of telling their spiritual children, pull up, pull up, pull up. You are nosediving into hell and you're about to crash. Pull up. In other words, obey church teaching. Repent and believe in the gospel. You are dust, and to the dust you shall return. And it's time for you to repent and believe the gospel and govern accordingly. And until you do that, you are committing the mortal sin of sacrilege every time you receive Holy Communion. You are heaping mortal sin upon mortal sin. And you are hastening and expediting your condemnation to the unquenchable fires of Gehenna. That's what I would do if I was a priest or bishop. And here I am, a lay person, and it's a no-brainer that that's what you should do. So again, if you're triggered by this video, that I'm not bowing down in worship of the blackness of Cardinal Gregory, that I'm not making an idolatry, that I'm not making an idol of his skin color. Oh, he was the first black cardinal. I'm going to bow down and worship the color of his skin and turn a blind eye to everything else he does and all the other damaging policies he has, whether it's through commission or omission. You need to read Canon 212, Section 3, because I care more about the salvation of Joe Biden's soul than I do about the color of Wilton Gregory's skin, and you should too. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and I will see you guys on the next video. Please subscribe, please like and share this video. Please go to all my social media channels, and I'll catch you on the next show.